All right, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's your good friend Pozzible here, and I'm back in action with another look at another movie that came out not too long ago. When it comes to the older movies, there's two ways I deal with them. Either I review them, or I remember them fondly as a forgotten classic, as something that happened a long time ago and that people don't seem to remember. And when it comes to that, this is a movie that I can simply just review, and that is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Now, Baron Munchausen is a real life person who, back in 1760, not long after he retired, he started telling these very tall tales. Among them, some that were shown in this movie, I should say, were that he rode a cannonball as it was fired from the cannon. Also, that he went to the moon. So these kind of things happen. I mean, basically, this uh, particular adventure begins with the Turks invading a city, and I forget the city offhand. But the point is, for some reason, it was like it's Wednesday, and they couldn't really fire their cannons or something like that. And in other ways, this was a movie that was kind of the anti-Age of Reason type of movie. It was a movie that started off with saying, it's the Age of Reason, and all you saw was this big battlefield, and you know, it, despite the war that was going on, this play was still happening, and this, very cheap and worthless production of The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. This guy was kind of making fun of him. When who should show up but the actual Baron Munchausen, who comes in and tells the story of his life. Well, wants to start to tell the story of his life when all of a sudden the people run away, they get afraid, and he realizes, this place is under attack, so he needs his men. Okay, Baron Munchausen, what makes this movie so incredible isn't really him per se. He's really just an average guy with just untold confidence and enthusiasm. But it's his men that really make this movie interesting because they have such amazing powers. You have a midget who can hear from miles away and and has Superman style breathing, if that makes sense. He can blow things away with his breath. You have another guy who has amazingly eyesight and can see from miles away, and a gun that he can use to fire from any distance. If you can imagine a guy who can you know, shoot a fly 100 miles away, this is your guy. And you also have one of the guys who's the strongest man you can imagine. Just to give you an idea, the reason why Baron Munchausen kind of ran afoul of the Turks is because while visiting a local wealthy man, he comes up with a bet that he can get wine from Venice within a day, and he sends his guy. Oh, and this guy, played by Eric Idle, I might add, can run faster than you can imagine. He's like the rabbit and everything, so he can run real fast, really hard. So he's in one place, like in the Middle East. He runs all the way to Venice, gets some wine, and when he comes back in time, he's allowed to get all the gold that a strong man can carry. Well, this is Baron Munchausen, so of course his strong man can carry all the gold there is because he's just so strong. And the imagery was kind of nice. The characters were amazing. The thing is, though, the pacing was very slow in some parts. The imagery, of course, is amazing. This is done by, Monty Python alum Taron Gilliam, who was their artist, or Gillian, excuse me. And he was their artist, and he drew these amazing things, and this was like his chance to turn those amazing things into a reality. But that's not really the story. The story is about how, in order for Baron Munchausen to save this town, he's got to go find his men. And he brings this little girl with him the whole time, as they travel from place to place. And, it plays off like a Greek mythology. But this Baron was known for the tall tales. It was popularized in a lot of works. It's really not known very much here in America. But over in Europe, I don't know if it's still popular or still even well known. The one thing that gets me about this movie more than anything else is the fact that Baron Munchausen was set in a time that it was past his time, okay, and he knew it. And it kind of made the movie rough to watch because, in something like this, you always want to see these people in their prime. You always want to see them in their great adventure. But here, he's kind of looking back. He's supposed to. Okay, this is the end of the Terry Gilliam trilogy, where he started with Time Bandits, he moved on with Brazil, and now here he is at the end with the Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Another thing I will say is that the setting was kind of off sometimes. There were times you felt like you were watching a person in real life. There were other times you felt like you were watching a play. You know, it was hard to really gauge what was happening, and some of the stuff was so far-fetched. Eventually you grew numb to it. You accepted it. It was like, okay, this is it, and if you want to be crazy about it, be my guest, because you've been crazy about everything else, might as well be crazy about this, right? So that's where they went with Baron Munchausen. An excellent movie, but it really has to be your cup of tea. Okay, this is very much an artsy movie. So most people that look for more of the straightforward, um, complicated heroes might not find this as enjoyable. This was a very old-fashioned movie about the heroes, but the fact that back in those days when they fought just because they could, because that was what heroes did. They fought bad guys, and they were the strongest, and that's what they lived for, and so that's what they enjoyed. And what the ending battle ends with such a triumph. You almost ignore the fact that it was kind of too easy for them to win, but you still enjoyed it, because the acting sells this movie more than anything else. Because that's what you needed in this movie. You really didn't have the technology for the special effects. You didn't have the understanding of the background, so you didn't really get in with the program until much later in the movie. It kind of drags in the beginning, kind of gets off with a slow start, and this one villain keeps popping up and going away, popping up, going away, and he's kind of in the background in comparison to the other people. That said, Baron Munchausen is not a great time to be had. It's an okay time to be had. It's an artsy time to be had, but it's really not the. I've had funner movies. That's what I'm trying to say. But I've had worse movies too. This movie sets itself right in the middle. So this is the ultimate niche movie. If you know you like these kind of movies, they're fantasy, they're over the top, they're tall tales, they're for you, and they're old-fashioned heroes. Think of like the Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers of the early like 40s, 50s type of deal. But don't think of the complicated heroes of today. This is not like a Spider-Man. We really don't go deep into the motivations, but we don't have to. We know who the good guy is. We know who the bad guys are, and we understand the conflict between them. For him, it's about the adventure, and that's what Baron Munchausen lived for. He lived for the adventure. So if you like those kind of movies, and while it may be slow in parts, it was still a good time to be had. Alright guys, that's it for me for today. We'll see you at the theaters.